Psychedelics are becoming very mainstream. And if people don't have the right information, if people don't hear podcasts like this to say, okay, wait a minute, hold on a second. Maybe I should go in this without expectations. Maybe I should go in this knowing that the medicine's not going to give me what I'm looking for, but what I need, that we educate people, because the educational part of this is really going to be paramount. Because as more people talk about that, as more people's childhood curiosity gets poked at, that hey, maybe psychedelics can help me because they were a breakthrough for this person. Okay, yes, but have you done your homework? Have you realized that? Make sure how you're going to navigate this. Make sure you're in the right setting. This isn't about just, hey, let me buy some chocolate bar from someone and see what happens, and hopefully once I eat it, it's going to be rainbows and butterflies. No.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. Today, I have Cesar Marin in the house. Welcome. So good to see you.
Oh, good to see you, Susan. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Absolute pleasure. And for our listeners that probably just met you here today, I would like to say a few lines of your bio to give a bit of a background context, if that's okay.
Perfect.
So you are a former CNN producer turned entrepreneur and thought leader in the psychedelic space. As the founder of Cultivating Wisdom and author of Cultivating Wisdom, a guided journey. You empower people over 50 to embrace transformation and personal growth through microdosing. A sought-after speaker and a podcast host, you're on a mission to break stigma and inspire meaningful change in the psychedelic renaissance. So good to meet you, and let's dive in to understand your background. Maybe what brings you to this work?
Susan, first of all, I wanted to thank you so much for what you're doing. I think that the conversations around psychedelics need to be had. I'm a big believer in honest, open, and objective conversations around psychedelics. So thank you very much for offering up this platform. Thank you very much for letting me share my story and what I'm doing. Yeah, it's a crazy world. Like you said, I was a producer at CNN for 25 years. And plant medicine, mushrooms, psilocybin came into my life at a really pivotal moment in my life. I was about to get laid off from CNN, where I had been for 25 years. And it just so happens that mushrooms started to talk to me. They started to come into my life. And through afterwards, an intentional use of psychedelics, I was able to completely turn my life around and reinvent who I was, and find a whole new way to present myself to the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so interesting to me that a lot of people come to the space in very unconventional ways, like almost like they kind of get dropped into it, and it's like almost like a pivotal point in their lives. It's usually creates a massive U-turn or transformation, or and I'm also very aware, Caesar, that a lot of people would say, my previous life, I was doing this. Would you agree? Like there is this almost like, before psychedelics, after psychedelics. That's very common.
You're so correct. You hit it right on the head, Susan. I think most people have that experience, right? It's life before psychedelics and life after. And it's the same thing for me, right? Before psychedelics, I was, on the corporate, hamster wheel, going through the motions, just getting by, just escaping. And a lot of people, and I've been very open about this, a lot of people know that before psychedelics, I was dealing with a really bad cannabis dependency, right? I had a really bad relationship with cannabis, and it was the psychedelics that were able to help me navigate through that and change my relationship. So there was definitely a before psychedelics and after psychedelics in that sense, but also in the sense of before psychedelics, psychedelics are bad, psychedelics are for losers, psychedelics are for crazy people, and now becoming an advocate, really outspoken about psychedelics. So there's definitely that before psychedelics and after psychedelics. And it's you touched on how everybody's story is unique. They have a beautiful story of this awakening, and like I tell people, the only reason my story is unique is because it's my story. Because everyone has this wonderful, unique story about how psychedelics has changed their lives, and it's wonderful that we can now have these conversations. Right? It was wonderful now that we can openly talk about what we're doing and using these medicines responsibly.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's so valuable. Um, from your experience, I really want to dive into your book, and congratulations,
Yeah.
you're the author
Thank
of
you.
the Cultivating Wisdom. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what are you sharing. But before
Yeah.
that, just as a general question, you don't have to really know the answer. I think it's really difficult to answer this anyway. Even like the psychotherapists and people in the clinical spaces and really honing into this space, they even struggle to address this. So one of my inquiries is that how do we deal with the disappointment? Because a lot of people who are who have received the awakening and who had their breakthrough on their medicine journey, and their lives have transformed, and they are doing completely different things with their lives, almost like this seems to be affecting them or impacting them on a multi layers, like their passion changes, their lifestyle changes, they change as a human being. It impacts their relationships, impacts how they relate to nature, life, existence. It's a very existential process that
Yes.
impacts us on a multi layers. um, and then on the other side, we have people who do their research and they kind of build such a high expectation. They come to medicine only to be deeply disappointed because
Hmm.
they don't get the same results. What are your have you had these conversations with people? What are your thoughts?
I have, and it's a great point, and I think you said it. Expectations, and that's the thing. When we expect stuff, that's when disappointment happens. And I'm a true believer that for a psychedelic journey to be most beneficial, to get the most out of that experience, there's a couple of things that need to happen. One, um, intentions without expectations, right? Because the medicine usually is not going to give you what you're looking for. It's going to give you what you need, right? So it's when we have these expectations of, I expect this to happen. And it happens to people who I've talked to who have had an experience, have maybe had a small breakthrough, and then want to go again to see if they could break through again. So they have these expectations instead of having intentions. And it's when we have expectations that those expectations aren't met, that when we can have that let down. So I tell people, one, go into these experiences without expectations, right? Have a purpose of why you want to sit with these medicines, but then also have intentions, but without expectations. And I think that when we do that, we're able to flow a little bit more, right? And look, I've had my fair share of challenging experiences with psychedelics, like really challenging, where, in the midst of it, part of me is like, wow, I want to get off this ride. I just stop, please stop. And it was like, no, 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 you have to go through this. And the experience afterwards, um, I think is really where it matters, right? Sometimes we don't have, our expectations aren't met, and because they're not met, then we don't really dive into what the message should have been, and then we don't integrate what the messages are. And I think that sometimes is a problem. The person who says, oh, I've heard about these psychedelics, I've heard about people using it, I've heard people had transformations, let me go try it, and then it doesn't go the way they wanted, and then they're let down, but they don't realize that there was maybe a message there. And since they didn't get what they expected, they didn't integrate, what the experience was. So it's I think it's one, yeah, don't, have intentions, have a purpose, but the fact of letting down or not having expectations could be a positive thing, at the end of the experience if it wasn't what you were expecting.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing the thought. That's really helpful and also good for our listeners to hear
Yeah.
it, because it's not all about the positive, you know. My thoughts on that. Lately, I've been formulating this theory about the disappointment. Since we are existential beings with existential loss, maybe there is an
Hmm.
original loss that we feel in our bones, and maybe that disappointment is actually the part of the work. Maybe that disappointment supposed to come out and arise to surface as an
Hmm.
offering to sit long enough in that disappointment to process it, because maybe that was the suppressed thing that medicine helped people feel. That, right? It could
Mm.
be. It's not just black and white, this experience.
You're absolutely correct, and it's sort of, an experience that I've had myself. This was about a year and a half ago. Went in, of course, with all the intentions. Had a purpose for sitting that day with the medicine, and it went completely different. It went in a different way. I spent 3 hours sensing, feeling like I was someone about to die. Like I had, it almost felt like I was cancer ridden, and I was days away from perishing, from just transitioning. And I just, there was this sense of why am I living this experience? Like, why am I having to go through this? I had these other intentions of this wonderment of, having answers to, where I go next. And afterwards, really sitting and analyzing what went on, it was really the medicine saying, look, you started this new business, before you would take care of yourself and you would exercise a little bit more. Now it's just work, work, work. Before you were a little bit more regimented in your eating habits. Now, because of work, you're just to eat whatever. So as difficult as that experience was, as you know, I didn't go in with expectations, but I went in with intentions and they weren't met. But I was able to afterwards say, okay, wait a minute. The reason why I lived through that experience, the reason why the medicine had me go through that and had that sense of, you're going to die. You're going to die was like, look, wait a minute, wake up a little bit. Like, get back to your exercising routine, get back to your nutritional routine, because that's more important than the daily work and then making sure that the emails are sent and whatever. So as much as I might have had the intentions of what was going on, and the journey was really challenging, the message at the end was like, okay, I get it. I understand it. Now, again, like I said before, I could have taken that journey and went, oh my God, the medicine doesn't work. And why do I have to be sick? And, I don't want to die. And that was a horrible experience. And, that was a bad trip. And I hate the word bad trip. I prefer challenging experiences, right? Or challenging journeys. But there was a message. There was a reason why I needed to live that. There was a reason why the medicine said, okay, this is what you need to live, this is what you need to feel, this is what you need to sense. So I'm a big believer, our minds are very wise. It's just sometimes we don't have that openness to sort of see what our mind needs to tell us. So I think you're absolutely correct in what you said. Whereas human beings, right, when we're disappointed, we have a tendency to put a negative on it, when sometimes those disappointments can come with positive um, lessons if we look at them the right way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for very expanded sharing on this. It's very, very valuable.
Mm,
So the disappointment piece is so huge right now, especially the
mm,
world is, going in a direction where people are seeking desperately to
mm,
maybe change what isn't working anymore. And to be honest, like, coming from a background of therapy, um, it is very common for me to sit with clients completely drowning in disappointment, because imagine if somebody had a lifelong disappointment from the beginning, from their infancy to toddlers to adolescence to teenage years, of there's all these events continually looping in these kind of experiences where the individual is extensively, experience a lot of disappointment, accounts of disappointment again and again and again. it doesn't surprise me that the medicine throws them into the disappointment immediately, because that seems to be the very thing they need to get past, dissolve, work through, process, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I see it as the part of the whole package, as you said, and you amazingly highlighted that it's easy to say it didn't go the way I wanted. I wanted to learn. Do you know? Before I ask you, kind of expand on this a little bit. One of the things that I laugh and I remember, and it puts a smile on my face. One of our community members said when she did a group session, she was very disappointed by the outcome of the medicine. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in her sharing, she was saying that I went to the medicine with my 5-year plan on my business, my, like one pager of questions I was going to ask, and one pager of different things I was going to have answer and clarity on. And the only thing I got was a lame answer. And I said, what was it? And she said, just be present to all. That was the answer. And I
And
thought,
if you think about it, yeah, how
it,
profound
it is, right?
it
It
is.
is.
If you think about it, and that's why I'm a big believer that the medicine doesn't give us what we want; it gives us what we
Mhm.
need, right? And that's what she needed in that moment. In other words, you have this 5-year plan, and you have this 10-year plan, and you have what's your plan right now? What
Mhm.
is your plan at the present moment? Right, what is it
Right.
that you need to do right now? And it's sometimes that it's sometimes, yeah, you're right. In other words, and look how disappointed she was. She
Mhm.
went in with all these expectations of what the medicine was going to give her, and the medicine gave her what she needed to hear, but she didn't hear it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a great conversation to be having, because I think this is very common across the globe, all,
Yeah.
everywhere. I mean, look, the psychedelic space is expanding, it's becoming mainstream.
Hmm.
Fancy Netflix documentaries are showing it like this love and light transitioning moment of people, breaking open and reaching nirvana or whatever. Is absolutely not true, right?
Mm,
Because
mm,
that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a
mm.
whole lot that we have to go through with this medicine work to get to that place. And so I'm glad that we are able to, and you're open to speak about this. One of my passion is to really bring balance to, let's talk about all of it and be honest with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
mean, one of the first expressions that came out when all the psychedelic work was being done in the '60s, it would said, to fathom hell or feel angelic, take a pinch of psychedelics, and it is true. I mean, it can, and that's why I think it's important that podcasts like yours have these conversations because, like you said, psychedelics are becoming very mainstream. And if people don't have the right information, if people don't hear podcasts like this to say, okay, wait a minute, hold on a second, maybe I should go in this without expectations. Maybe I should go in this knowing that the medicine's not going to give me what I'm looking for, but what I need, that we educate people because I think that the educational part of this is really going to be paramount because as more people talk about that, as more people's childhood curiosity gets poked at that, hey, maybe psychedelics can help me because they were breakthrough for this person. Okay, yes, but have you done your homework? Have you realized that, make sure how you're going to navigate this, make sure you're in the right setting. This isn't about just, hey, let me buy some chocolate bar from someone and see what happens. And hopefully once I eat it, it's going to be rainbows and butterflies. No, it's still, work needs to be done. And that's why, and I'm sure you preach this a bunch, and I've seen you talk about this, integration is 70% of the work. 30% is yes, sitting with the medicine, taking the medicine. But if you really don't take that integration afterwards, there's no sense. There's no sense in, because then if you don't integrate, that's when you find people, and I'm sure you've had the same situation. So how many times have you sat with ayahuasca? Well, I lost count at 275. What? Excuse me? Have you been integrating any of these processes that you've been going through? And I think that that's sometimes, like you said, it's those expectations that we set up that then can set us up for that failure. And that's why it's important that we have these conversations, that we have these psychedelic conversations, so that the people who are psychedelic curious, right, can know how to navigate these waters and maybe know that, hey, yeah, I had that experience, but I remember when I heard on the podcast, that I should take a bigger, deeper look into what the experience was.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for highlighting that again. The integration process is
Mm.
so critical. Um, I've been looking at my latest passion project is to investigate and dig out the I call them psychedelic elders from the beginning of time. The early
Mhm.
psychedelic revolution. We're so lucky to still have some of them alive and kicking, and they're very much position themselves as one of our pioneers, like Dr. James Fadiman, we have Stan Grof, we have Amanda Fielding. She's been in the, they call her now they've given her a title. She's the first lady of LSD, for example.
Yes.
Right. So we have many that are not among us anymore. And I've been digging out the archives on how they did this, how did they explore, and what did they learn, and what did they share. And
Mm.
these are like, from comparing to now, back then, there is actually a very old documentary filmed. It's called The Philosopher's Stone in Switzerland.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
honoring Albert Hoffman's
Albert Hoffman.
100th birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they filmed, all these, all walks of life elders came together, and they all each, some from the counterculture, some from the science, some from different places, and they all honored him, and they all talked about psychedelic in the most poetic, eloquent, and the most importantly, from a very respectful place. So what I'm seeing now, so just to kind of compare, and maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So because we're now in this digital age, right? We have this digital age, like, a lot of people talk about, we have now ChatGPT and the godlike
Hmm.
technology, right? And we
Yeah.
have these social media platforms with algorithms that only work on if you're posting, for example, somebody goes and documents their ayahuasca experience in Peru or Costa Rica, and they document it on Instagram like as if it's like another worldly, I don't know, expedition with all the technological fancy stuff. I think that's also shaping and impacting and influencing people currently, how they view psychedelics. Because in the past, in the history, they didn't have that. They were very real. Our psychedelic elders were very much direct, real, with the harm that it could cause and their own existential experiences with it. They were very honest. Now
Hmm.
we have filters, we have technologies to polish it up, make it all fancy because we're working for the algorithm.
Yeah.
Therefore, if people are discovering a psychedelics on social media for the first time, they fall into it. They think
Mm.
this is how it's going to go down. I think these are
Mm.
my personal opinions, but I'd like to hear yours.
No, I think you're absolutely correct, right? And that's why, again, honest, open, and objective, right? And when you say honest, open, and objective, that means let's be honest about the good and let's be honest about the bad, right? Let's be open about the good. Let's be open about the bad. Let's be objective about psychedelics, right? Let's not, psychedelics are for everyone. Psychedelics are great. Psychedelics are going to save the world. No, psychedelics, first of all, are not for everyone. Right? It doesn't. Number two, there can be an enlightenment, right? But there's a lot of work to needs to be done. So it goes back to the educational part, right? Look, I walk around with shirts that say much love. I walk around with shirts that say microdosing on them, right? Because I want to start conversations, because that's where it starts. It's not about, hey, let me go microdose because Caesar's microdosing. No, educate yourself, do some homework, Like read up on it, find some documentaries, find people, find community, right? And that's where you sort of get the best experience out of psychedelics, because you're absolutely correct. If all of a sudden I'm scrolling and I'm seeing, oh, this person and they're in, somewhere beautiful and it's amazing and it's an adventure and it's, Indiana Jones, and all of a sudden, they're sitting with Mother Ayahuasca and then their lives are beautiful and everything's awesome. Yeah, but let's also show the realistic part of it. Let's show, the work that needs to be done. Let's not glamorize psychedelics in the sense of like it's the latest trinket, the latest fad. Let's be honest and open with people that there's work that needs to be done. And I think that we live in a society that we're all looking for that quick fix, right? We're looking for that quickness. We don't want to do the work. And our elders did the work. You know what I mean? Our elders did have to go underground. Our elders did have to sort of, be very honest about these things. And I think that we need to do the same thing. And look, I'm sure you've had incredibly wonderful human guests on your podcast who have cultivated an incredible amount of wisdom, right? And that's what we need to do, right? And that's why when all of this started and I started cultivating wisdom as a company, it was that we cultivate this wisdom about these medicines, but we do it the right way, right? That we really cultivate that wisdom, that it's not this hype and whatever, and psychedelics are awesome and let's all go do them. No. There's wisdom behind these teachings that need to be taught. So it's really, I think it's really important. In other words, we can't, there's no way we can control that flashing up of psychedelics, right? That's going to exist. What we can do is we can control our own narrative, and we can have podcasts like yours who have, again, these honest, open, and objective conversations about psychedelics. I've heard many of your podcasts, and it's not all about, hey, you know what, no, let's sort of talk honestly about these situations. So I think that yes, the algorithm exists, and there's a lot of people, trying to navigate the algorithm. But then at the same time, there's people like yourself and there's people like myself who are really bringing good content and information about psychedelics, and we just, we do what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for doing the work that you do. And now we can maybe tie into your book. What are you teaching us? What are you sharing us with your Cultivating Wisdom? I think that's a very good approach, Cultivating Wisdom, because I think the knowledge and the healing and what's shared in our psychedelic experiences require that level of cultivation, right? It takes time. I hear people saying like, I'm still unpacking or making sense of my experience several years ago. Yeah. So please tell us, what are you sharing?
Yeah. So it's the book is really funny, and I'm going to press it by two things. One, the medicine comes to me and it almost asks me, hey, be a voice for people your generation, right? There's young people talking about psychedelics, but we need someone who has gray hairs, you know what I mean, who's older, who can have these conversations for people who are older. And I had always wanted to I thought writing a book would be interesting. I wasn't sure whether it was a book about my experience or my life, or if it was, hey, a white paper on the science behind psychedelics and microdosing, or was the history of psychedelics. So it was me trying to sort of figure something out. And it was funny because I was microdosing psilocybin for a good amount of time already, and the book project was sitting there, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I started a protocol. I found a way to perfectly dose LSD and get on a protocol of microdosing LSD. And I went on a 4-week protocol of 2 days on, 2 days off, microdosing 10 UGs, 10 micrograms of LSD, which is a tenth of a recreational or therapeutic dose. And it was funny, Susan, because the first day, it sort of seemed like I was a bit more focused. There was something that was more focused about, the microdosing with the LSD, and something was sitting there saying, don't forget about the book. Don't forget about the book. Don't forget about the book. And I was like, okay, whatever. The next day I sit at my desk and I'm like, okay, what is it about this book? And a vision starts to come to me of, why don't you create a kid's book for adults, right? Introducing them into what microdosing is, that it's not some scary 100-page paper that I have to read, but it's something that sort of said, hey, look, this is what microdosing is. This is what it isn't. This is how it's been working. This isn't the psychedelics of the 60s. This is the psychedelics of Johns Hopkins University and the Imperial College and Harvard and Emory and Stanford and so many other institutions that are doing this, and then package something up that I could offer up for free, right? It was sort of the book is my gift to people to say, hey, this is what microdosing is. Come in with curiosity and then maybe leave with a little bit more understanding of what it is. So what I offer up in the book is a way for the psychedelic curious, right? That person who or either was like, oh no, psychedelics are bad. I've heard in the news people take psychedelics and they jump off of buildings. Or that person that when they were younger, oh yeah, I tried that once. I put my hand in a bag of mushrooms and that person says, okay, wait a minute, this is different. There's some science behind this. There's some intentionality that goes through this. There's integration that needs to be done. So the book is again, it's a way to poke at people's childhood curiosity, and that's why I like to look at it as a kid's book for adults on what microdosing is. And it's been received really well. It's sort of, again, it's a good way to spark people's interest, and then they can say, oh well, you know what, Cesar also has these courses, and there's a course on, if I'm microdosing, how to enhance my cognitive skills and my creativity. There's a course on, hey, how to reinvent yourself at any age. I mean, look, I'm perfect proof that at 55, right, where most people are like, oh yeah, life's almost over, I'm almost ready to retire, because of what happened in life, I had to say, wait a minute, hold on a second, reinvent yourself. And yes, the psychedelics helped me when used intentionally, when used safely. They help me to think broader, to be more creative. And that's what I want to sort of amplify in the book, that through my use of safe and intentional use of psychedelics, I was able to reinvent my life. So it's it was really fun putting it together, because it wasn't, it wasn't this clinical study or this historical study on what psychedelics was. And it was fun. It was fun. And now, I mean, down the road, I definitely want to put together a book on, a bit of a memoir on my story, coming, I tell people, look, I was born in a room that had dirt floors. I mean, out in a real, urban area of Colombia. And then to go on and work at CNN for 25 years, and now to go on and be a thought leader and speaking on stage, about the safe, honest, and open use of psychedelics is quite a transformational story. And I hope that, if one day just one person could be inspired by saying, you know what, wait a minute, hold on a second, I can reinvent myself at any age, then the whole message and the whole mission has been accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations. Honestly, this is very helpful. And also, I think it becomes effortless when it's our own field experience and our own where we are in the cycle of life. You said
Yeah.
over 50, how do you reinvent? I think this is also very, very important right now, because in the past we just get on with it, retirement, off you go. But now so much has changed. I think it's going to spark a lot of curiosity around that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Especially people over 50, right? If you think about it, a lot of things, right? One, when I think most people, when they turn 50, you realize there's 50 behind me. There's most likely not 50 in front of me, right? It's even at 40, you're like, I can make 80. Good nutrition, good exercise, I can make it to 80. But at 50, you get this realization that, okay, half of this ride around the sun is pretty much over, at least, you know what I mean? And at 50, you're like, okay, what am I? Is this 2 years left? Is it 12 years left? Is it 22 years left? Is it 32 years left? And what am I going to do with them? So for me, that sense of you can do anything you want. Like today's the best day of your life. Today is not 10 years ago, not 10 years from now. Today is the best day of your life. And at 50, when you start to realize that and you live that way every day, it's to me it's been magical, right? It's been, I'm at that age, I'm 57, where I'm wise enough to know what best fits me, and the psychedelics have really taken me to that point of really manifesting that every day anything is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say, well, this is my favorite part, uh, the honest, exploration of the psychedelics. So if people are ruminating, stuck in the past, stuck in their victim rumination, sadness, grief, sometimes, most mindfulness practices don't cut it. They just cannot snap out of it, because there's a whole life of mastery level reinforcement of these patterns. And I guess this is where microdosing comes, like gently, slowly pulls people out of there. Would you say that? Would you say that's true?
I think that's completely true. I think that when used correctly, and it's all about setting intentions, right? I think that those intention setting in the morning, whether you're microdosing or whether you're not microdosing, are incredibly important, right? Whether it's that intention to go in the supermarket and say good morning to everybody, whether it's that intention to call the family member that I haven't called, whether it's the intentions to finish that project that I need to finish. When we set those intentions, we set our mind, right, on a path of where we want to go and not where we've been. And that's a huge problem that I feel a lot of people have, is that sense of that ruminating brain of the thoughts of the past, which, you know, let's be honest, the thoughts of the past only bring on depression, because you can't be depressed about the future. You cannot be depressed about something that hasn't happened. The same way that anxiety is caused by thoughts of the future, because you can't be anxious about something that happened in the past, right? So when we're able to sort of close those doors a little bit to the thoughts of the future, what's going to happen 5 years from now? What's my 5 year goal, my 5 year plan? What's your plan right now? When we're able to close those doors a bit to the past. Oh, well, if I would have done this, if I would have done that, well, it's the past. Can you rewind and go back? No, you live right now. So when we're able to do that, when we're able to live in the present, there's an incredible book. I'm sure you've read it, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he talks about that real sense of presence of once in a while doing a 360 and going, wait a minute, I have everything I need at this very moment. At this very moment, I have everything I need, because I have this, because I have my family, because I have my health, because I have. So when we're able to do that, when we're able to sort of live in that conscious moment of right now and shut the mind down a little bit, because at the end of the day, it's just all up here, right? I think that's when we can really put our feet on the ground and are able to stop ruminating in those thoughts. There's this really cool meditation that I love to do, and I'll take 5 minutes and I'll go outside and I'll close my eyes and I'll just listen. I'll listen for the birds. I'll listen for cars passing by. I'll listen for an airplane. And the moment my brain, because we all have monkey brains, the moment that brain starts to think about, oh yes, I have to do this project. Oh, brain, be quiet. I'm listening to the birds. And when I'm able to do that, I'm able to do that not only in that meditation, but I'm able to do that at work. I'm able to do that in my everyday life, where it's like, where I feel that I'm not being present, I can tell my brain, hey, brain, be quiet. I'm paying attention to this. Or, hey, be quiet. I'm listening to this person. Because if not, then that's when we can, like you said, we can get all those thoughts get away from us. And it's when we let that one thought turn into another thought, turn into another thought, turn into another thought, that we can have that ruminating brain and get set in that sense of depression of like, why am I here and not here? And it's, I love telling people that I work with it, that sort of, we always as humans, we ask that question, why am I not up here? Like, why isn't this happening? Why, whatever? Well, the reason why you're not up here is because you're right here. And maybe 12 months ago, you were down here. Right. So it's right there. When we're comfortable in the present moment, that's when we, I think, breathe a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And we can use the leverage of the microdosing and these mindfulness meditation practices and
Mm-hmm.
other mindfulness practices to really increase our capacity then to hopefully break the cycles of the patterns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that's it. It's just at the end of the day, it's just patterns, right? It's just
yeah,
we have, like, most people know, that default mode network, right? We're always in the same way. We're navigating the same path, and it's when we're able to sort of step back a little bit and go, wait a minute, let me analyze the now, right? Let me rethink those patterns, right? Like you said, patterns, and create new patterns, create new little habits. That's when we take those step forwards, and then we go from here to being up here, and then next moment is up here, right? So it's sort of, it's that mindfulness, and it's important. And for me, the microdosing has taken that and amplified it, right? It's really made me the most present being of, or version of myself possible.
I love that. Yes, I always thought the microdosing was very profound. Um, it's that mighty little mini doses consistently can change you so much more sustainably than the going for one big blowout of blowing out our nervous
Yeah,
system. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think for the Western mind, it's very complex, very ruminating, with high
yeah,
expectations. I think we're very interesting species in the West, and I think
yeah.
microdosing does help us get past or behind some of those, right? So
And I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm sure you've taught your clients this also, or the people that you work with, that there's things that have to come along with this, right? The importance of integration, the importance of intentions, the importance of, sometimes that lower dose goes a lot longer than that higher dose. The sense of community, right? The importance of community, the importance, and that why, look, it's when psychedelics come into my life, right? And this is one of the important aspects I think about psychedelics and microdosing. Um, and I start telling people, I start talking to people at work, at CNN. Susan, I was at CNN telling people I'm microdosing. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, you're telling us that you're using drugs. And I'm like, no, well, sugar's a drug. Caffeine's a drug. I'm using something that the earth has given me to be a better person. And I want to share these experiences. And I went to buy a t-shirt. I wanted to buy a shirt. I wanted to buy something to sort of manifest that I'm using psychedelics. But of course, everything was very trippy. Everything was very psychedelic-ish. Everything was very either tie-dye or mushrooms that were melting. And I was like, that's not the conversation I want to have. And that's why the apparel brand Cultivating Wisdom was born, right? Because, something like this, it's not offensive, that just has much love, right? Someone who knows about mushrooms might ask that question, or someone who doesn't know might ask that question, or the shirt that says microdosing, right? That someone comes up to me and says, hey, you microdose? I've heard about that. I've read about that. Can you cultivate me with some wisdom? Or someone says, oh, you microdose? So do I. How's it going? How are you feeling? What are you microdosing? What's your protocol? So you open up the conversation a little bit. And I think that's a really important, and that's why I love the name of your podcast. It's Psychedelic Conversations, right? That's what it's about. It's about these honest conversations that we can have by people sharing their stories, good and bad. The same way that I'm going to share my story about a wonderful experience I've had, I'm going to share the story of a really challenging experience that I had. Um, I think that when we do that, when we have these conversations, then the Western world opens up a little, because the problem, I think, is when it's like, oh yeah, let me try microdosing because I've heard people doing it, and let me go get something, and then, oh wait, hold on a second, I took too much, so this doesn't really work, or I didn't take enough, or this doesn't really work, or the sense, and I'm sure you've had people ask you, what should I be feeling? Well, you shouldn't be feeling anything. I mean, you should be doing things differently, but this isn't about how I should be feeling or whatever. So I think it's that educational part, that conversational part that we're having, that's being opened a little bit more. Because let's be honest, I don't think 10 years ago we wouldn't be having a podcast, having a conversation about using psychedelics. We'd be like, oh, I don't know. Now it's like, no, let's just do it. Let's have these conversations. So I think that, yes, the Western world can learn a lot from these medicines, but hopefully when they do it the right way. Hopefully when they educate themselves and there's some educational. And again, that's why all these platforms are incredibly important.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. As we're coming to the end of our conversation, I'd like to ask, this pendant that I'm seeing, is that your also, is that your product also? And maybe
Okay.
where our listeners can find these apparels and amazing products.
Oh, so I love that you asked me that question. Thank you very much for asking me the question about my pendant, because it's a wonderful story. When psychedelics come into my life, like I said, cannabis had me gripped. Cannabis had me by the scruff, and it was, whatever cannabis wanted. And when psychedelics come into my life, I call my mother, 80-year-old Colombian woman, and I said, Mom, you know that cannabis dependency that I deal with? And she said, I'm your effing mother. Of course I do. And I said, Mom, well, get this. I'm going to start to use psychedelics to overcome my cannabis dependency. Susan, she literally, like, her brain exploded. She was like, are you crazy? Like, have you lost your mind? Do you, like, what are you talking about? Like, you're now going to use psychedelics? You're going to go from using cannabis to using like, she literally said, have you smoked that much weed that you think that that's the solution? And I was like, Mom, look, I'm a journalist. I've worked at CNN for 25 years. I've done my homework. There's science behind this. And right now I have two options. I continue to go down that path, or I try this. So I'm going to try this. And she said, whatever. I don't even want to speak to you anymore. I don't even know what I did wrong. I just, don't talk to me. And I was like, okay, Mom. A month later, when she says, like, holy cow, he started his own company. He's talking differently. He's speaking differently. She's in Colombia. She this and she buys it for me. And when she hands it to me, Susan, she says, I'm so proud of what you're doing. So I tell people my parents are proud of the fact that I use psychedelics. So if that's not an endorsement, what is? And now my mom makes these. My mom makes these pendants, and she sort of, she hands them out to her friends. She does it on her free time. So it's a story of people will see the difference, right? People, when you tell someone and you share with someone, hey, I'm using these substances, be aware that a lot of people are going to think you're crazy, you've lost it, but the transformation will show them. That speaks volumes. When people see that you've transitioned, that you've changed, that you're thinking differently, that you're acting differently, that speaks, that's priceless. So it was that things like my mother's affirmation of what I'm doing has led me to, one, again, continue to push this apparel brand, right, which is cultivatingwisdom.net. The idea is to openly and proudly talk about our awakenings, talk about how psychedelics have helped us, right? And I get it. There's people that can't go out and say, hey, I'm doing psychedelics. That's fine. But you can wear a microdosing shirt and someone says, oh, you're on drugs. No, I'm microdosing love. I'm microdosing humanity. I'm microdosing just life. And then from there, obviously it turned into, me realizing that I could have this voice for people over 50. So that's where I created microdosingover50.com. So, if people know someone over 50 who they might think that psychedelics or microdosing, can help them out, it's a good platform for them to see someone like them, because I think that it's important that we, we try to talk to our people, right? The people that look like us, right? The people who we see in the mirror, right? That someone says, oh, wait a minute, he's been divorced, I've been divorced. He lost his job, I lost my job. His kids are older and don't call that much. My kids are older and don't call that much. He suffered on age set depression. That's what I'm going through. So it's important that, we talk to our people. We talk to the people who can resonate, who can identify with us, because they might be the ones that most need it. That person is right now living what maybe I was living before psychedelics, and we go back to that before and after life of psychedelics, that maybe that their childhood curiosity is poked at, and they say, hey, you know what, let me do some homework and let me see how psychedelics might be help me with what I'm dealing with and I'm struggling with. So definitely check me out on, like I said, the apparel brand is there. We offer up really cool stuff that's not trippy or psychedelic-ish or tie-dye. It opens up conversations. So we want people to have these conversations. Microdosing Over 50 is there. The free ebook is on microdosingover50.com. So please download it. I want to put together a little, maybe a psychedelic conversation promo code for your listeners, that we could do. So I'll give you one so we could put in the show notes. Maybe we'll go SYCCOV, psychov. So psychedelic conversation, CNOV. Because we want people to have these discussions. We want people to have open, objective, and honest conversations about psychedelics.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Appreciate the offering as well. And they can find you on LinkedIn, social media, your podcast,
Correct.
and
Yes.
everywhere else.
Yeah. I started a podcast called Love You Wealth. It comes from the idea that there's two types of people in this world. There's people who manifest love you wealth, and I didn't say money. Wealth, because wealth is the home I need. Wealth is the clothing that I need to wear. Wealth is the food that I'm going to eat. Wealth is me taking care of mine, right? And wealth is, yes, I hope I can create all these stacks, not because they're going to make me happy, but because if I use love and spread this wealth, I can make other people happy. So there's people who manifest love you wealth. There's people who manifest FU wealth. So the podcast is the sense of, let's relook at wealth more in a love sense, right? And not in a wealth money sense, right? Are we filled with wealth of health? Are we filled with wealth of love? Are we filled with wealth of compassion? Are we filled with wealth of empathy? Because that's priceless, right? That'll take us so much further. So the podcast is on LinkedIn. It's going to go a little bit wider. Yeah. So LinkedIn definitely. And then, if you're on Instagram, cultivating.wisdom, it's just me sharing my experiences and sharing wisdom and sharing thoughts and, talking to people about what microdosing is and it's not, because it's important. The educational part is going to be really important as we move forward and more people start to get interested in psychedelics and microdosing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Amazing. Thank you. As again, as always, so good to be connecting, and hopefully we can connect again and follow your journey in the future and have you back very soon.
I hope so, Susan. I hope so. And, I've said it a couple of times during this conversation that today is the best day of my life. So I want to thank you for being part of the best day of my life. I want to thank your followers and your viewers and your listeners for being part of the best day of my life. And go out there today like it's the best day of your life. Go out there and spread much love, because that's what it's about. When we spread love, things come back easier. Go out and cultivate that wisdom that you have. Share that wisdom that makes you feel that fire, and share it with other people. So, we're in a wonderful time. I know that we're in a time of challenges and a time of uncertainty, and a time of, some people feel lack, but if we look at things differently, if we look at things with love, if we look at things with like the abundance is everywhere, then maybe we can sort of change our own mental perspective. And when we change our own mental perspective and we change the energy that we vibrate, then hopefully we can change the energy that's around us.
Amazing. Thank you for dropping more wisdom. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you guys enjoyed this session. Do comment, feedback, whatever feels right. Share your own experiences. If you're microdosing, drop it in the comments. Don't be shy. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Cesar. All the best. And I'll see you very soon. Bye for now. Thank you.